Hey, let's say good morning to our guest this morning, Michael. And let me see if I get this name correct. Riedel or Riedel?
Actually, it's Riedel, Rollin. Riedel the Needle, they always called me around Broadway when I was fanning all those shows over those years at the New York Post. They said, Riedel the Needle, coming to give your show a bad review. So it rhymes with Needle. That's how you can remember.
I like that. I like that. So for years now, decades, I guess we could say, you have been a reviewer, a critic, and so forth of Broadway. But you've also taken it to other steps. I mean, we've got a book out that we're going to be talking about today. You've had a radio program. Are you still doing the radio show there in New York City?
I am indeed, yeah. I co-host the morning radio show with my good buddy Len Berman. People would know him from NBC as the sportscaster. Used to be on the Today Show all the time. And Len and I do a 4-hour morning show, 6 to 10 every morning, 5 days a week here in New York City. And, we bring different things to it. Len knows sports better than anybody, and, with all due modesty here, I know Broadway pretty well. So I do the entertainment stuff, Len does the sports stuff, and then we argue about politics. But, oh, my God, we're exhausted. Thank God this election is over. To be honest with you, Roland, I didn't think I could go another week with this election going on. Len and I we were out of gas.
Yeah, I've got to say that is probably the whole feeling of the country is like that. It's like, no, we don't need another week for this. So glad it's done. Let's talk about Broadway. But I'm kind of curious as you do the show with your co-host there on the radio, and he's got sports, you've got some Broadway background and so forth. You probably find some areas where they kind of run the same parallel path in how things happen in emotions and how things are set up. Do you ever talk about that?
Yeah, we do. I mean, I think some of the times where we laugh about our various beats that we cover, Len Sports and me Broadway. Sports has their share of divas, and I got to tell you, Broadway certainly has its share of divas. Those great sports people who are paid huge amounts of money, and they have a coterie, an entourage of people, and I see the same thing in showbiz and Broadway. And sometimes. And Len says, I've seen it happen with some sports figures, and I've certainly seen it happen with some actors. You become so successful, you become so rich, and you're surrounded by all these people who are just constantly telling you how great and how wonderful you are. And the egos can get out of control. And Len and I, basically, Len a sports writer, me a Broadway critic, we're the guys on the sidelines, shooting spitballs at some people who sometimes get a little too big for their britches. So it's sort of fun to take people down a couple of notches from time to time.
Well, the book that you've got out, A Singular Sensation, The Triumph of Broadway, in that book, do you talk about some of these divas? Do you talk about some of the emotions? Do you talk about people that are there to try to chop down some of those that maybe got a little too big in the head?
Yeah, yes. Broadway is a crazy place. You have to understand that the stakes are so high, okay? You put your life on the line for a show. You have invested all this money. A Broadway show costs between $10 and $20 million. You've got all that money into it. You've got the rehearsal. Your whole life is dedicated to getting the show up. And then on that opening night, you may have spent 10 years getting the show to opening night. Everything you have done in your life has been getting it to this moment when the curtain comes up. And then a bunch of cranky people like me sitting there in the audience go home and write a little book report, and we can just destroy you if we don't like the show. And that's the end. I mean, in my book, I chronicle some shows that opened and closed very quickly, where people lost tens of millions of dollars just because 5 people, and I was one of them, didn't like what you were trying to sell.
Well, in that sense of the world, do you ever find yourself a tough time to sleep at night, or do you ever find yourself looking over to your shoulder thinking somebody might be out to get you?
Well, truth be told, and I'll be totally honest with you, I always sleep better after I've written a bad review because I know it's going to be funny and people reading it are going to kick out of it. But over the years, I have had some altercations with people that have led, well, in one case, there was a director on Broadway. He did a production of Fiddler on the Roof. He was an English director, kind of a nice guy, but he was a little bit of a snob, I always thought. And his production of Fiddler on the Roof was very strange because for some reason he didn't cast any Jewish actors in it. It was the most bizarre thing. And I saw it and I thought, Fiddler on the Roof, I mean, it's got to have a Jewish soul. That's what it's about. And yet he cast these girls as Tevye's daughters, and the actresses' names were Murphy, Kelly, and O'Reilly. I thought, this is kind of weird. So I wrote a review and I said, I never thought this could be done, but somehow this director, this fancy-pants English director, he's taken the Jewish soul out of Fiddler on the Roof. And he was so furious at me. Furious. And one night, I was at a bar in the theater district with a friend of mine, and we were having a glass of wine at the end of the bar there, and this director walked in, and he came right over to me, and he said, I object to your review. I object to the fact that you think that I did not give Fiddler on the Roof a Jewish soul. I find that offensive. And I said, listen, his name was David. I said, David, calm down. It's okay. We can have a friendly discussion. No, I object. I said, David, look, you're some Oxford elite intellectual ruining a great American musical. Bam! The next thing I knew, I was on the floor. Smacked me. And, Broadway is a hotbed of gossip. The next morning, I got a call from Cameron McIntosh, the producer of Les Miserables and The Phantom of the Opera. And Cameron was so excited. He said, Michael, I heard David hit you, and you've broken 5 ribs that are in the hospital. Not quite, Cameron, but that's how the gossip mill works on Broadway.
Well, in the book, Singular Sensation, The Triumph of Broadway, do you talk about any friendships that developed in all these years that you covered Broadway, whether it be a director, whether it be an actor or so forth, anybody that really developed as a true friend?
Not to drop a name, but...
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, you may have heard of one, Andrew Lloyd Webber.
Yes.
Yeah. So over the years, a lot of critics beat up on Andrew Lloyd Webber because they didn't like his shows, and he was so successful. I frankly think a lot of them were jealous. But I happen to think Andrew Lloyd Webber is one of the great composers of all time. I mean, there's not a Broadway composer out there that I know who would not give his right eye to have written Jesus Christ, Superstar. I mean, that you hear those 6 notes, and man, it just draws you in. So I was always kind of a defender of Andrew Lloyd Webber. Never met him before, but I wrote better things about him than a lot of critics did. And then back in the day, I used to be a regular on Don Imus's morning show, Imus in the Morning.
Mm-hmm.
He had this very attractive blonde English woman who was on the show too. And one day he put us together on a panel, and she said, you don't know me, but I know you. I said, oh, really? And she said, hi, my name is Imogen Lloyd Webber. I'm Andrew Lloyd Webber's daughter. And we started to work together on Imus's show for about 7 or 8 years. We were together once a week doing entertainment news. And we just became great friends, and it was through my friendship with her that I got to meet Andrew. And he did take me aside once, and he said, a lot of people have beaten up on me, but I want to tell you, I've always appreciated the fact that you've always given me a fair shake in your reviews. So
awesome.
We're kind of friendly to this day.
All right. Well, I look forward to finishing the book, Singular Sensation, The Triumph of Broadway. Where do we find it, Michael?
Rollin, of course you can get it on Amazon.com, but, if you've got a local bookstore in Eureka, I'm a big believer in supporting the independent booksellers. So anyone who's listening to this chat and wants to get my book, I urge you to go to a bookstore in your hometown. Those independent booksellers really need your support now. So buy the book at a bookstore.
There you go. Michael, it's a pleasure. I wish we had more time to talk because very interesting to hear from you. I'll try to tune in, catch your